Dallas Famous podcast is supported by the Mullen & Mullen Music Project. The Music Project was created by Mullen & Mullen Injury Law Firm to champion the independent music scene in North Texas. I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast.
There's a place that I like to go where the sun sets fast and the night moves slow. A frame of mind and a frequency where the rhythm of life rolls naturally.
This week on the Dallas Famous Podcast, we welcome Paul Salfen. He's a TV host, producer, author, and media veteran. Among his many credits, he co-hosts Drew Pearson Live, The Ultimate Hail Mary, and has worked as a correspondent for OSN in Dubai, reaching audiences across 22 countries. With over 2 decades in the media, Paul has made a name for himself by interviewing some of the biggest icons in entertainment, sports, and business. His impressive roster of interviewees includes Tom Cruise, Beyoncé, Metallica, Garth Brooks, Mike Tyson, and Sir Richard Branson, giving him unique insights into their success. His book, Going For It, compiles wisdom and stories from these high achievers, offering readers motivation and a deeper understanding of what it takes to reach the top. I know you'll love this chat with Paul. Here it is. We are back at the Deep Elm Community Center. I'm sitting with Paul Salfen's, actually Dr. Paul Salfen.
Yeah, apparently.
That is pretty, I wanted to start there, because I was looking at your stuff and I'm like, this isn't showing up, and it just happened not that long ago.
It did just happen, and it's a strange thing. Now, I cannot give medical advice or write prescriptions. I should preface with that.
I'm going to end the podcast now.
Sorry. So it's an interesting thing. I've started working with Harvest Christian University, and so my friend Sir Earl Toon, who is in Cool in the Gang, he wrote Celebration, Ladies Night, Get Down on It. Yeah. Incredible guy. He wanted to induct, because he's an alumni and you can make suggestions, and he wanted to induct Drew Pearson. And he said, oh, yeah, and I want to induct you. And I was like, wait, what? So he got the head of the school over, and I was like, this is incredible.
Wow.
And so I got, it's an honorary doctorate, but still they say that you put in the life's work, and once you've achieved a certain point, that's when they look at you.
Yeah.
And so Sir Earl Toon, he didn't go through the whole college thing, but he wrote, he's in Cool in the Gang. They sold 75 million albums in the Grammy Hall of Fame. So they're like, of course he can be a doctor. So it's a really, really interesting group of alumni too. Every single person is interesting, and most of them are not like everyday names of people that you would know of either, but you read the bios and you're like, how did I not know about this person? So I kind of feel very honored to be a part of that. And also on top of that, I went to New York for this last class, and they asked me to speak, ahead of Busta Rhymes. And I was like, oh man, this is something I didn't see coming, opening for Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there right in front of me staring at me. And I'm like, this is weird.
That's strange. I was going to say that's something that, how long, let me just introduce you a little bit better. I don't have enough time in this podcast to say everything you've done, but you've interviewed celebrities.
Yeah.
You've had publications. You have a publication. There's a million things. You're working with Drew Pearson on his show that was started as a podcast. Now it's a show on Roku.
Yeah.
That's all amazing stuff. So we're going to get to your story too, but I just want to start with at what point when you were doing this did you or has it happened where you're like, I'm cool, I don't care how famous you are, I'm not that nervous about this?
Oh, I never get nervous, and maybe I'm just dumb, and or I don't have some sort of weird sensitivity to it. But it almost never happens, and it hasn't happened in so very long. The only time. I remember in college, because I started doing this in high school. In college, John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin invited me to do an interview with him, and he decided he wanted to do it in his room. And he had his mandolin there, and he was like, "Do you mind if I play?" And I was like, it was out of body, And he's like, "Are you going to the show? Would you like a ride?" And I rode to the show with him in the van. And at that point, I kind of felt like, be cool.
That is maybe because you were so young, you were, you didn't have that. Like, cause I feel like when I was younger, I could do things. And I was like, how did I do that? Now I'm like, oh, think about that 5 times over. But
I think it's because I don't think about it too much. I honestly don't prepare that much for my interviews. I talk to them just as if I were talking to you. I don't know what you're going to ask, and it doesn't matter. I just try and go with it, and I try and think, okay, if I was sitting next to this person on a plane, what would I ask them? And the interview can change depending on where it is that you go. Because I watch a lot of other journalists, they do interviews and they got their list and they're going to stick to that list. Even if somebody goes into some really meaningful, deep story, it's like, okay, so you've got a new album. It just seems like such an odd transition to me. But, everything I've done has been trial and error with a whole lot of error. So, it doesn't matter. So what you come to find out about everybody is, of course they say, oh, they're everyday people, they put on their clothes just like you. Yes, but there is something special about them, and that's why you want to talk to them. So, you kind of have to honor that. And so I always get excited for the interviews, but I wouldn't say really nervous. Unless it's just something like, Harrison Ford, or Samuel L. Jackson or somebody like that. That's like the interview could probably go either way because, they're probably not the most thrilled to be there.
Right.
But other than that, I always say that everybody can behave for 10 or 15 minutes. So you're going in a friendly situation and they want you there to help promote what they're doing. So it's easy.
Yeah. I feel like I want to ask you these questions, but maybe we should start by you kind of giving us your background.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Like you started where? Mississippi, is that right?
Well, so I was born in Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of the blues. That's where Robert Johnson, who recorded here, he supposedly sold his soul to the devil at midnight at the crossroads in Clarksdale, where I was born. So
wow,
maybe the devil's still there. I don't know. but I was just there when I was a kid, and then we moved to Texas, where my parents are from. My parents met in the 8th grade. They're high school sweethearts, still together, still in love.
Okay.
Never seen them fight. They're like the most wonderful people, and I think that's part of it. Is my dad is just such a lovely guy and always tries to talk to people and help them and gives great speeches and is a great writer. And so I've always been around, that element. But yeah, so we were around in Texas and then moved to Philadelphia. And I was there for end of middle school, high school, and college, and then came back here. And I've been here most of my adult life.
This is when you live in Texas.
Yeah,
here?
I live right here in Dallas.
Okay, so that was one of the pieces I was like, why did you come here? But you knew it well.
Oh yeah. And
so
my
you're going to
parents
school,
are here.
high school here?
So I went to high school in Philadelphia and college in Philadelphia, and then came back here. And it's kind of weird to move as soon as you get done with college and start over in a big city like this and not really know anybody.
Sure.
But the interesting part about that is I did know somebody from when I grew up. When I was a kid, we lived in Temple outside of Austin, and there was a kid that my parents were friends with his parents, and I hadn't seen him in forever, and so they go, "Oh, Shannon." I go, I haven't seen the guy since we were little kids, and I said, "Well, you should reach out to him. And, I think he plays music like you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so we met up at a Starbucks, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to play you some of my songs." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's a cool guy. But instead of handing me the music or telling me to download it, he goes to the back of his car, gets out his acoustic, and starts playing. And he just has this beautiful voice, incredible songs. And we were in a band together, next thing I know. And that band is now called The Far Star and still is in some semblance of order. But we played at Gypsy Tea Room, opening for Blue October. We played at Trees. We put out an album. Matt Pence, produced it for us.
Oh, yeah.
Love Matt. And we got to play some incredible shows.
What were you playing in the band?
I was playing guitar.
Okay. Yeah. That, it's funny. Like that must have just got overshadowed by all the other stuff you've done. Cause I finally saw a photo where cause I'm friends with Scott Tucker and you mentioned like, I will come back for Aztec Militant. I was like, wait a minute, you played, but it makes sense. Like, let's go back further to your story. I know MTV is a big pivotal part of your story. Mine too, by the way.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to watch, MTV and VH1, and they would always, like Headbangers Ball and like those things. They would always interview the artists, and I was like, see, I want to do that,
Yeah.
And so, in high school, we had this broadcasting class, and I don't know if you had those. They're like little like prison TVs in the corner of the room, and all the students did it, and everybody just seemed nervous or high or whatever. And so here I was. I don't know. I think the teacher thought it'd be funny to put me on the weather. So here I am with my long hair and rock t-shirts, and I'm like, today, and I'm trying to read the cards, and it's like, today it's 75, and and they're like, what's wrong with this kid? And the teacher had no faith in me, and he was just like very dismissive, Mr. Chin, and he would say, he's this gruff little guy. He's like, you like music? Go talk to some bands, because we had to go do segments.
Sure.
So we went downtown to the Trocadero and Chestnut Cabaret in Philadelphia, and just knock on the back door, side door, bus door, whatever. And we're just like, hey, with the big camera, our show sucks. Will you be on it? Like, sure, kid. And all these like bands that we watched on MTV were right in front of us. And they're just like, they just stopped and they just thought it was kind of funny or cute or whatever. And they're just like, yeah, all right, sure, kid. Wow. And we got to go backstage and on stage and side stage. So Robert DeLeo from Stoked Up Pilots, the bass player, he just an incredibly cool guy. And he just, just took me under his wing and said, hey, you ever watch a show from on stage? And I was like, no. He's like, come on. And you ever go backstage? And he was like, oh, you know what? And he was doing an interview, I think, with Spin Magazine. And he said, you want to sit in on it? Just listen. I was like, yeah. And took me on the bus. Ever been on a bus? No. And so,
this was in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think that one was right out of, but yeah, they,
right, that age,
they were, yeah, that's how old I am. And this is how long they've been around. They were opening for Megadeth, and which was pretty mismatched.
Not
and the
good
crowd
fit.
Didn't love it. But
Yeah.
but then I got to meet the guys from Megadeth, and they were so cool and gracious. And I was just like, this is so cool. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so we gathered up all this footage, and we came back and to the teacher, and we said, oh, here you go. And we're excited for him to watch it. He just like smacks his head and he goes, I met bands in the school. And we're like, oh, all dejected. Oh. And he goes, but good job. I don't know how you figured this out.
Yeah.
And so that was just like, it was just the bug that bit me. And I was like, okay, now I know what I want to do. I want to do this. And so, I went to school at Penn State, and then I went to school newspaper. I was like, okay, I can interview these bands like I did in high school. And they're like, no, that has nothing to do with our school. They were all about the Joe Paterno and the football, and they just didn't care, And so I was managing a record store, and the guy goes, well, we just started an online music magazine. We have all the artists come in and do signings and whatever. So you could talk to all them and talk to whoever else. And I went wild. I just started requesting everything. David Bowie, like anybody I could think of. John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. Mick Taylor from the Stones was in there during Exile on Main Street, and got that one. And they were just like, it was so new, all that stuff. And they were just like, oh, yeah, sure, kid.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Did you ever get Jerry Garcia?
No, but I did. It was in a strange moment. He walked past me at one point, and we glanced at each other. So it was kind of cool. I didn't actually talk to him, but I was like, wow, that was Jerry Garcia. Oh, wow.
I'm impressed personally.
Yeah. And it's just been so wild, Yeah. And that kind of led me full circle, because I just kept doing interview after just an obnoxious amount of interviews. I go to the Warped Tour, try to talk to every single artist there. And some of them became really big and some of them were really interesting. But I just, and then I came down here and went to the Dallas Morning News, and I was like, okay, I want to do like your celebrity interviews. And they're like, yeah, you and everybody else. And they go, but what have you done? And I was like, and I got them a big folder of and like printed out and stapled like interviews. And they're like, hey, all right, sure. I think they were just exasperated.
Right.
I was like, come on, And I started doing all that. And then I don't know if you remember Envy magazine, where there was still, up until a few years ago, the boxes that were still around there, always next to those Observer boxes. But yeah, so Envy magazine, they said, hey, can you do a cover story with a celebrity interview? I was like, yeah, of course. And I didn't know who I was going to get. I was like, yeah, what do you want? And I just started making wild requests again and got him Eva Longoria, who's really big at the time, on the cover. And they went from being like a party magazine, they changed all the content to try and be, just a little more upscale. And so, because it used to just have party photos, and they would go cover bikini content. It was just like,
right.
whatever, and club flyers on the inside. And then all of a sudden they started having really nice car ads, like Lexus and Mercedes. And so we're like, all right, well, this is good. And they said, can you do this every month? I was like, yeah, of course I can. I didn't know if I could really, and then it just kind of snowballed. And then, it was bought out by 944, then shut down, and then went to Flavor Pill, and then, kind of swung around. And then I met Drew Pearson, and that brings us to that. So he, this was 2012. So, geez, time just flies, doesn't it?
Yes.
So this is our 13th year together. He had a show on Fox Sports, and I met him at an event, and I walked up to him, and I wasn't even familiar with it because I didn't watch the Cowboys at that time. In fact, I don't know. I was conscious of the Cowboys even. I was just a kid. But he goes, I said, oh, congrats on your show. And I said, hey, if you ever need an ugly white guy to come on there and do like celebrity interviews, I'm your guy. And he goes, I'll see you on Thursday. I was like, what? No audition, no nothing. And just,
oh my gosh,
just was going to give me a shot. Because I guess that he was given a shot, like, all right, get out there, kid, And then after a couple shows, I go, how did you know? He goes, no, I didn't. He goes, but it's just like football. If you, if you don't, if you don't play well, then you sit on the bench. And I was like, oh, good. So, and then we went from Fox Sports to KTXD to ABC, and then now, we've been doing a podcast, and now it's going to be on Roku. So
yeah,
it's just wild, just the bouncing around of it all, and that's just like part of what I've done. And I think it's just because I'm kind of a workaholic, but it's because I love what I do.
Yeah, but also, also people must like you. I mean, like I was talking to Scott about this, like. You've talked to so many celebrities, but every one of those celebrities talks to thousands of journalists through their career, and yet a lot of them seem to remember you.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So what do you think that is?
I just I only do stuff I'm genuinely interested in, and try and do stuff I know about. Like I'm sure I could do a rugby interview, but I don't.
But on that note, you're like you go to Drew Pearson, you're jumping on that week. You're not a sports guy. Are you not talking to sports people?
I am, and it just reminded me of something so funny. I remember because we had a couple of we always have players on the show,
right?
And I remember at one point we just had this deluxe segment, and there's 400 Cowboys on, and me, and they're talking about the next year. And Drew knows that I don't know everything about football, and I never played, and so he's like, hey, he calls me Paulie. He goes, yeah, Paulie, what do you think? What do you think about this guy? And I had no idea. I was like, well, I gave him the best football answer I could, like the locker room answer. I was like, well, it's so unpredictable, in this game, and
right.
with the way things are right now, anything could happen, and we all know this. But I just that's when I'm
like that Kevin Costner speech, right?
Yeah, nonsense tangent, and they were all laughing as soon as they cut for the commercial. They're just like, you had no idea what I was like. I hope you didn't make up that name.
Right? They could have got you bad. That's funny.
But yeah. So what's interesting is everybody who in music, it can be years and years apart when you between albums or when you talk to somebody. With TV and film, these guys are always working, and so it's very possible. There's some years where you'll talk to Matt Damon 3 or 4 times or something.
Sure.
If you're in that that circle, and so after you see someone that many times, you know who you are. I mean, I saw him one year more than I saw my aunt and uncles. You know what I mean?
so wild.
So he was like, he's like, hey, how you been, man?
Right, they just know you.
I make no illusion. It's not like these are my best friends, although some have become friends, which is really weird.
Yeah.
My birthday was yesterday, and
happy birthday!
Thank you. And I had like a bunch of people reach out that were like in my book, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, how do they know?
Yeah.
But it was just so nice. And I just started thinking about just how blessed I am to have the people that I grew up listening to and watching on TV, seeing at the movies, counting them as friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's all because I don't do any bad features. I don't do hit pieces on anybody.
Sure.
I don't try and make anyone look bad. If it's something I don't like, I just don't do it.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. It's tough because I'm more of a concert photographer, but I've had to be I have to recap shows sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've been to shows that I hated, but I'm trying to keep doing this, and it's not that I'm lying. It's just I'm not going to make. And also I take my dad, who's also an interviewer. He's like, we want people to go to the show. We're not trying to keep people from the show. So
yeah, well, and that's part of the thing too, is that if you think about it, they really care more about the photos than they do the review.
Yeah,
because the reviews aren't always nice, and there's usually
the publicists are the ones that want the reviews, though. So I'm like, come on, I just got asked.
They do, but they care about the nice, pretty photos.
Yeah,
and now, especially now, because they can use those.
Yes,
and so I've actually, interestingly enough, I've started shooting shows myself because my daughter picked up a camera, and was going through photography class, and I was like, I could probably, help you shoot some shows.
Sure.
And she was like, oh, wow. And I was like, maybe we could even do it together, And I was like, I don't know if they'll give me 2 passes, but it's been such a joy to see her. She's so much more talented. She knows what she's doing. I'm like, I know what kind of settings are good for the dark, and I know which lens is probably good. That's about it. No formal training, but I've gotten lucky. I've gotten to shoot Cirque du Soleil, and they used one of my pictures for their ads, and I was like, wow, So
that's great.
I don't know. It's just part of it's just this fumbling around. Oh, I put out a book. Oh yeah, I got my doctorate. There's a few other things I'm working on. People are gonna be like, what in the world is going on?
We're gonna get to the book for sure.
Yeah.
I had this thought, like talking about dads. I got to shoot the Harlem Globetrotters recently for American Airlines Center. It was very cool, but it was like my dad was like, never been more excited than anything I've ever. I've shot Barry Manilow, Paul McCartney, lots of, and he's just like, you've made it.
Yeah.
Did you have someone that your parents were like, oh my God, this is real now?
Yeah, Billy Joel. It was funny. My dad apparently to the people we had the Billy Joel passes, and they thought my dad looked like Billy Joel. They're like, "You're him," and my dad's like, "I don't know." He was like, "My son is more known than me," and they were so confused because they're looking at me like, well, "Who are you bigger than Billy Joel?" No, not. I'm not. He's not Billy Joel.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But it's been actually a real joy to be able, because my dad actually did. So he did movie reviews when I was a kid, and so he would take me to the movie screenings. And he didn't really do much in the way of interviews when I was a kid. Otherwise, I probably would have been like, "Take me." But we would see movies early, and we would talk about them and talk about. It wasn't good enough to say, "Ah, that sucked." It was like, "Well, why? What didn't you like?" And you start to recognize certain characteristics and things. And so now I've gotten to know some of these people, the actors and directors, and I introduce them to my dad, and they're like, "Oh, we love your son," and it's just like, this is so cool.
That is very cool.
And so it's just nice that they were able to see me do something. I so hard on myself. I never feel like I've done enough. I still don't.
That's so weird.
I feel like such a slacker.
I can relate, but it's just not true. It's just not true. You've got a body of work that speaks for itself.
I don't know.
But I remember I heard on one of your podcasts, maybe I got this wrong, but the impetus for your book was sort of like you would do these celebrity interviews, and you're not in charge of editing. And even if you edit it, it doesn't matter because they're still, the people are going to do what they want. They're going to take that one, like you were saying, like they'll tell this great inspirational story, and then that won't make the final cut because it's not relevant. So that is fascinating to me. I never even thought about all the B-roll is better than the A-roll a lot of the time.
It's wild because the TV segments are 3 minutes apiece, right? And so if they're promoting something, at least a minute and a half of that is what they're promoting. Probably the full 3, and they would prefer it to be 3 minutes. And then if they can make it shorter, they will.
Yeah.
And then, but some of these people have like just the most incredible stories, just the things that they've had to fight through to get to where they are. I love getting people's advice, to pass along. And now with social media, it's even better. You just throw those clips out there and, just see what happens. And people pick them up and just putting some good out there in the world. But, just talk about their creative mindset and their success mindset. Like what do they tell? I love to ask them about, what they keep in mind that keeps them on the right path even when things are tough. Because as a creative types, we're notoriously just so hard on ourselves, and I am all the time.
Yeah.
And so like it's nice to think about that they go through the same thing,
Right.
And my old friend Larry Hagman, JR, miss that guy every day. Another strange tangent, but I traveled with him for many years, and he used to say, every once in a while someone would say, I'd love to take you to dinner. And he's like, let's go. And I'd be like, do you know them? And no. He goes, acting is a constant state of unemployment. He's like, so take the free meal.
Nice.
And so it's just funny to get to know these people and just realize that they're always on the chopping block,
Yeah.
Their show's always in danger of getting canceled. The movie may not happen, the financing might come through, the book deal may not, and so it's this constant like walking on eggshells, like, oh gosh, am I going to be employed tomorrow? And so even if they amass all this money, they think every check could be their last.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that is so wild to me, because I'm just like fumbling through life. And I'm like, well, if I got $20, I'll spend it. I might even find a way to spend more. And it's interesting just to see, how everyone operates. Right.
Yeah.
But, we're all kind of the same creatures.
Indeed. One more question before we get to the book. I find myself, I don't know if I struggle with it, but it's something I think about. Like, and it's probably in those celebrity 3-minute interviews, it's different. But like, how do you have your personality come through the interview without taking over the interview in any way?
Oh yeah, that's a huge one for me, because I see people that try and, I don't know if it's just kind of like a main character syndrome thing, but they want to be like they think they're the Jimmy Fallon or Conan O'Brien or, whatever. But the thing is maybe Jimmy Fallon's maybe a bad example because he likes to put himself in skits and in playing with people and whatever. But I just mean, like, if you look at Conan O'Brien or David Letterman or Jay Leno, they are obviously a personality themselves, but they are there. The guest is there to promote what they're doing.
Sure.
And so, like, I'm not going to step on that time, It's so crazy to me how many people will just sit there and tell these long-winded stories about, when I started listening to you. And I'm just like, my goodness, stop.
If I do it, I usually cut them out.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's okay. Because sometimes, but when you have those, because if you see a 3-minute segment, it's because the time slot was 5 minutes,
Yes.
And in 5 minutes, you don't even have much time to make a good rapport with people.
Right.
And so you have to go in ready. And so any kind of like, nonsense questions or playing games, like, okay, thinking of a number, I don't know what they do, the F, Marry, Kill, or, like,
Sure.
just these like strange things that people will do, and a lot of it comes back from their producers. They did this to me at Dallas Morning News. They said they were doing a Valentine's. I asked them their favorite love song, and this is a couple months before, so I'm here in like December going, what's your favorite love song? I'm like, do not want to be that guy, So but what's great is if you just ask genuine questions that you're curious about the answer, they can sense that, they know who's there because they're paid to be there, and they know who's there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get lucky and you can be paid to be there and want to be there.
Yeah. That's the dream, right?
Yeah. I try.
So let's talk about your book.
Yeah. Going for it.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And it's pretty wild. I've been working on it for years. Like, it does not seem like a new book to me. Like, it's actually been done for a couple of years.
Okay.
So what happened is all these, like the Hugh Jackmans and all those, they have these great stories about their struggles. It gets cut. Nobody ever sees it. And at the time, I couldn't really do much with it because, you even though I book all the interviews myself, it still would seem weird to, sort of half and half it to where, okay, here's this for the show, but I took the rest of this over here.
Yeah.
And, but then I started to really, really enjoy getting to, and that's kind of also how you get to know people a little bit better. They tell you stories about their lives and their struggles, and they're, and they like that you're interested in that, not just like, hey, what was it like to work with Matthew McConaughey?
Right.
And so what I did is I started, so I got hit by a drunk driver and I got sideswiped by an 18-wheeler. And then I was caught in a car that was on fire. And I got out, all three of these things without a scratch, by the way. And I thought, there's something left that I need to do,
Yeah.
And I was looking at this giant stack of these SD cards where all the footage was. And, and I'd start and put together a Word document of just the cool stories. And I was just like, I got to do this. So I worked like a man that was running out of time. like I was told that I was going to die. So I was like, okay, I got to do this. And I furiously worked all through this Thanksgiving break and all through the Christmas break to just do as much as I could. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is getting bigger, And so I just started just going through all night, just going through these SD cards, pulling the great stories out of there, the great quotes. And I was like, okay, I need to make this even better. And I started doing interviews specifically for it. And my friend goes, yeah, dude, he goes, I have no idea why you don't have a book and why you don't tell your story, because, you can get paid to do speeches. And if you're an author of a book, that's kind of like your in over there. He's like, that's really your calling card. Like, you need to do that and do it for your kids, And I was like, yeah, all right. So I just started frantically working, and all of a sudden I was like, this is like a book I would read, because you could turn it to any page, and even if you don't know who they are, but most likely you might, it's a cool story about, or a cool thought on success, or life, or a crazy story about how someone made it. And it's just a great, I think, thing about the human spirit. And so that's why I called it Going For It, because that's the common denominator, is everybody just took that extra step. They didn't go to that party. They didn't, go out and, golf with their friends or whatever. They were working on their craft, and they did it.
Yeah.
They used their last $20 to go to an audition, skipped meals or whatever they had to do. And I feel like that's kind of been like my life too. So I'm kind of like, these are my people.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, and it's cool because you've been this person that's been, I mean, look, we do this because we love it, but also there's like got to be this, I'm assuming with you as well as me, where like we want this documented, we want these people's stories told, and your story needs to be told. And so like, I know this isn't a book, like an autobiography, but it still is your story in a way, like your life, your collection. And so I think it's really cool that you're able to do it.
Yeah, actually I had a much longer version, twice as long as that. And
so it's part two?
We printed, part 2 is already done. We printed it out, and it made such a thud when I put it on the table. I was like, this is thicker than the Bible. No one's going to read this. It's too much. I wouldn't even read it. So I just decided to cut it in half. Mm-hmm. That
was probably hard, right? I mean,
so hard, because, it's even thinking that part 2 will come out. You still just, you start thinking about it going, oh man, I want to put all the people that I know and love in the first one, but then, there's so many good things in there. But I had, at the beginning, was a long story about me and my journey and all that stuff. I go, I don't think anyone's going to care. And then my friend said, well, put it in part 2. Because then, they're set up for what it is, and they're going to want to know more about you.
That's a good point.
That's what I'm going to do. But the interesting part about it is now, since all that, I've done enough for a part 3. So I'm now working on part 3.
Wow.
Or book 3. So, that was the whole point of that, is to say that telling these people stories, because I thought if I died, all this stuff dies with me. Yeah. No one's going to go through these SD cards. Not even my kids. That it's either put it out or don't. And I'm just like, man, they took the time to talk to me and tell me these heartfelt things. I feel like it's kind of like my responsibility to get it out there in the world. And if no one cares, no one cares. But at least I did it.
Yeah. I am ecstatic that you gave it to me. I think a lot of people will care. I mean, what's changed since the book's come out, like for you?
It's like a perception thing. It's not like no one's come to me and said, oh, well, here's this, here's this giant check, go do more of this stuff. But although I am going to have a Going For It show on Roku here pretty soon.
Okay, so that's huge.
Yeah.
And you got an action figure.
Yeah. That was like, all right.
That is cool as hell. Like you and Harrison Ford are in the same company now.
I'm going to sit them next to each other.
You should. It's funny. I used to be friends with Walter Koenig's son. And he had a whole shrine. Like one was all Star Trek and one was all his figures.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I would do that too. If it were
That's
me.
so cool.
Yeah.
No, I love all that stuff. And, it's I think it's a perception thing because now it's like forever you're an author. And it's like if you produce one TV show, forever, you're a producer,
Yeah.
You write for Rolling Stone once. Oh, he's a writer for Rolling Stone.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
It's kind of one of the, and it's just a life bucket checklist. And I dedicated it to the kids. And so it's good for me to live to see that, and for my parents to live to see that I had done something worth writing a book for.
Yeah, well,
and
you have. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I don't even think we've even covered that much. I like one question because I know how it works for me, but like, are there points in time where you're doing these celebrity interviews and you don't know where they're going to end up, or are you always doing them where they're going to go? Yeah,
so they usually don't agree to do them unless they know where it's going to go.
Sure.
So, and part of it is, but I've actually, strangely enough, gotten to a point to where it's the people, their publicists will ask, hey, can you talk to Matthew McConaughey or whatever. And then they're like, oh, by the way, where is this going to go? So now I've kind of gotten to a good point where I'm on like the good list.
Yeah.
Like they know they're going to get a good interview out of me.
You're going to make it happen.
Sometimes that's worth more than having a bigger publication. If you get like, if they know that your publication is troublesome and they're just going to ask gossip stuff, they'd rather have me,
Sure.
Which I'm happy to benefit from.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool just to be able to do what I do and just be happy to do it. It's something I feel like I could do for a long time too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you kind of age out or burn out on or something, but no, I can be a talking monkey for a long time.
Well, I guess it's like as long as you're interested in it, right?
Yeah.
And you're still interested.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing is seeing so many people come and go, and you've seen it with photography, right? There's some people that come and they come blazing in, and they're they're at everything, and then all of a sudden they just. What one day you just stopped? It wasn't fun. You don't like it,
right?
I don't get it. Like I don't know. Once I like doing something, I'll keep. I went to my dad's softball game today. He's retired and he's on a senior softball league, and they all just do it just because they love it, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably what I'll do. If I'm lucky enough to make it that long, I'll probably be doing interviews with some of the greats, hopefully.
Yeah. No, is there anybody like that you missed, like they just passed away, or you just didn't get to them that you really wish you had?
It does happen sometimes. What's funny is I actually, because I do so much, I go to a lot of award shows, I get a lot of events and premieres, and so I've run across almost everybody. And so even if I didn't get to talk to them, I probably shook their hand, asked them about something, or been around them. And there's almost nobody that haven't been at least even in the same room with, because, I've been around, presidents and, like
I wouldn't even
religious leaders.
President Biden gave you an award, right?
Yeah. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it came with a thing with a signature on it, and I was just like,
insanity.
That's wild. I was like, that's how you're old.
Old /
when they do like the
respected.
tributes or whatever.
Sure.
I just had a big birthday, and they made this video of all this stuff. I go, oh man, I feel like I'm at my own funeral.
Absolutely. Well,
no, but it's fun. I just it's such a joy to do this, and I hope I'm if I'm cursed to walk the earth long enough, then I hope I'm blessed enough to do it in the way I want to do it.
Yeah. So I guess you're kind of alluded. Are you going to take that advantage of being an author and doing like speaking engagements?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In fact, I don't want to jinx it, but I just applied for my first TED Talk.
Oh.
And that looks like that might happen in October. So
where would that happen? Do you even know? Or?
Cape May. So if anyone's listening, it's near Boston.
Oh, okay.
So if anyone's listening, then
I was like, damn, I'll shoot it, but it's got to be here.
But I don't know. We'll see. I'm just putting it out there in the world that I'll go speak. I love speaking to schools. One of our local heroes here, Trammell Crow, he this is funny. He asked me to go speak at the Barack Obama Male Leadership Academy, which I didn't even know existed. And it's a school where all these kids are bussed in from other neighborhoods that wouldn't have as nice of a school, and they have to wear shirts and ties. Yes sir, no sir. Like very very proper, very taught, wonderful things. And very, very interested. I went and spoke over there because he asked me to, and the kids just I had some pictures of me with Beyoncé and all that stuff, and they were just oohing and ahhing over it. And these kids wrote me letters and they thanked me for coming, and I'm just like, see, that's what I want to do. And so I'm trying to get this book in schools and libraries. And I'm one person. I need a whole staff, but it's me. So I'm just doing what I can.
You have a publisher, but you still don't have helping people.
I have a publicist, Ashley, and she's fantastic, and I have great friends.
But you reached out to me, not her. So that's what I like about that. You're hands on. Yeah, that's cool. I'm so happy that you reached out to me. You're now my new idol, and because you're kind of doing what I do in a different way. I like to take the photos. I don't necessarily want to sit down with the celebrities per se, but my analogy is I'm in a boat with a paddle, and I'll let the current take me. And as soon as I see something on the shore that I row. And I feel like you've been rowing this whole time to all kinds of places.
Sometimes I get lost.
Yeah, but then you find it.
But in that, but in these kind of things, you can meet people who can connect you to other people. And sometimes, one of my friends is the photographer Tyler Shields, and he comes here, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he is so good. And he's somebody that I think that you could sit down for a half hour with and just pick his brain. And who knows, he might say, hey, come to one of my shoots, and he does these incredibly elaborate big fashion shoots and just wild photos. And he comes to town every once in a while to do a thing at the Samuel Lynn Gallery. But it's those kind of things that I feel like it's always nice to meet people, because you never know where it will go.
Yeah.
I didn't know hardly any of those people were going to end up in a book, but now it's got its fourth award, and got a show coming.
Award winning. That's amazing.
I know, it's strange. That was kind of a funny thing. Remember when they had those book fairs in school?
Sure.
And you got those little stickers that were on it, like
Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah. It's not a Pulitzer, but but yeah, they just gave me the order for the stickers. So now I could put the stickers on for the International Impact Award. I was like, that's so cool.
That's amazing.
So I don't know. Maybe it'll help. Maybe it won't. Maybe
it's cool, because some people might go, oh, what's the point of interviewing these people? It's there's a point, but B, just this book alone, kind of to me is this is why you did it. Even if you didn't do it for this, this is a great culmination of that work.
I just feel like it's I'm in the University of Life, and every single one is a class, and I just learned something, and I feel like I take away something from just about every interview, especially when you ask the right questions.
Sure.
And I'm always learning, and it's kind of a renewal of my spirit too, to be able to talk to people and realize that, hey, they're struggling too, but they're doing it, and so am I. And so it's just kind of a little good reminder all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any last, I don't know, if somebody wants to do what you're doing in some capacity, how do you start?
It's interesting, because, knowing my story and knowing that, how I did things, that is not how you're supposed to do it, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
And so the interesting part about it is, people do ask me, your kids, I had someone emailed me yesterday from SMU and said, I really love what you do. And I just want to know, how do I do this? And it's strange, because I start to think about it now. And we're living in a time where you can find just about anybody's information. If you wanted to interview the president. If you want to interview a big actor, director, there's places and databases where you can find, like, we didn't know before. We're just like, how do we, and it's like a little network of people. Hey, have you ever heard of anybody, this guy doing interviews? How do you get a hold of him?
Right.
And so now all the information is out there. And it's just really, that's the big thing about it, is never giving up. Because there are going to be no's, just like they get no's in auditions. And it's not necessarily because of you. Sometimes you just don't fit the role. You don't look like that part. And it's the same thing for this. Sometimes they're just, Tyler Perry's not, interested in your publication. And it's not you, or whatever it is. So it just keep asking and keep going. Keep going for it, right?
Yeah. It wouldn't work the way you did it now. And the reason why, for me, it's like Inhaler last year, I shot them, and they were at Echo, and now they're at House of Blues. No photo.
Yeah.
They're already no photo, and it's just like they're not even at Dos Equis or somewhere big, and it's just like that's what you run into. But I feel like as trying to do interviews, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, it just depends sometimes, because that's the thing too. Sometimes people feel like they've made it. We don't need to do interviews, or like Billy Joel, he's selling out stadiums. Why does he need to talk to you to promote the show?
Yeah,
and so, but the thing is, there are windows though, and sometimes like I know Tyler the Creator is no photo right now, for the whole tour, and a lot of times
actually,
and that's the thing. Sometimes they have, they have segments where, they're no photo, and then they'll drop it at some point. And then sometimes they'll go back to it. Same thing for interviews. There's people who have not done an interview in like 20 years, but then all of a sudden they'll put out something that means something to them, and they'll talk to everybody. And like, wait, how did this happen? Like I grew up listening to Iron Maiden, and I just could not figure out the interviews with them for years and years, and it just always eluded me. And then all of a sudden, one day it just opened up, and now I've interviewed 3 of them.
Wow.
So and I like to do that. I like to go back and find the people that I grew up listening to. Same thing. The singer of Whitesnake. Could not find him. He's just very elusive. Even at the shows, they never even really see him come or go. He's like a ghost. And doesn't do a lot in the way of interviews. And then I interviewed a few people in his band, and I don't know, somehow word got back, and all of a sudden, after being not available for 20 something years, he just, yeah, of course. Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I love it. I'm like, wait, so he's calling me. I'm like, so, these things happen. So I would say just keep trying, because you never know. That's the thing. These guys have charities. They'll do parts in movies, and you bet those studios are going to make them do interviews, and they'll make them take photos too. So it's one of those things. Like there's always, I think, a way in. Unless you're not on this earth anymore, there's always a chance. You know?
I think that you said it like at the beginning of this answer, which is just like consistency. Like just don't give up. Just keep doing it. If it's not working the way you're doing it, do it a different way, but don't stop.
Yeah. And do good work too, because that's the thing. Like if you, not that everything has to be positive, but if you're just like constantly bashing people and saying crazy things on social media and just like all that, like they research, they look into, who it is that they're putting in front of their precious beloved talent,
Absolutely.
and if someone's just seems like a jerk, like it's going to be really hard to get in the door, even if you happen like, oh, but I'm the editor of this giant magazine. They're like, who cares? Like, if you ruin our day by doing that interview like that, that's it. Yeah. So I just try and, just tell people to do good work and be good to people. That's the thing. You never know where someone's going to end up. I've seen the craziest stuff, know. The last thing, like last week, I talked to Kid Rock, who was on the Warped Tour and getting things thrown at him by NoFX. Like they were just badgering this poor guy, and I kind of spoiled the end of the story, but basically what it was is like, this band and this guy were, on the Warped Tour. All these punk bands were in vans, and he was in this nice tour bus because Atlantic Records paid for it. And so they were so mad, they had the air conditioning and all that.
Oh, they're jealous.
And so, they would just pelt him with stuff and give him a hard time, and they'd be booing him, the band's on the tour. And he just made him mad. He worked harder. And, but when he blew up, he remembered me, that I was there at the beginning, because I was like, who cares about these people? Like, they're not buying new records anyway,
Yeah.
And And I know it hurt him. And so when I saw him, he recognized that I'd been there since the beginning, and that's, and he doesn't do hardly any interviews now.
Or photo.
Yeah. So now, all good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, thank you so much. You are absolutely more than Dallas famous. So thanks for coming and doing our podcast.
I was like, well, I guess I could be Dallas famous.
Oh, you're beyond. You're beyond. I mean, I feel like I saw you subconsciously, like at Cinemark theaters, like,
I was. Yeah.
Like,
in the little pre-show, they played my interviews, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So,
it's
one of the many things.
Yeah. We should do a part 2 where we just read your resume. That's all we do.
A dramatic reading. Maybe I could get a good voice actor to come in and
we could
do it for us.
I know a few. Okay.
And then he got found himself in a premiere.
I mean, we're joking, but you never know. It could happen.
That is true.
Anyway, thanks again for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to have all the, if you want to just shout out the social, we'll have it in the notes too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm at Paul Salfen, which is SALFEN, and at Going For It Book, and then paulsalfen.com and goingforitbook.com. And I don't know, I'm pretty easy to find, I think. So come and find me. Say hi.
Awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Paul Salfen. We've got all the links in the show notes for you to check out his stuff. Thank you again to the Mullen to Mullen Music Project for their support. We've got a link for them in the show notes. Thank you to the Deep Ellum Community Center for letting us record there. Theme song, The Place to Be by Electric Ants. You can catch the Dallas Famous podcast every Sunday at 1 o'clock on Deep Ellum Radio, and then Wednesday on all the podcast platforms. Please like, subscribe, enjoy, share, all the good things. We'll see you next time.